Everyone's doing their phones off. Okay. Welcome to this meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel on the 27th of September 2023. I declare the meeting open at 2 p.m. My name is Julie Walsh and I'm the chair of today's panel. Also sitting on the panel are expert members Linda Kelly and Larissa Ozog and community member Richard Colley. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. There are no apologies and there are no declarations of interest. The procedure for the meeting, I don't need to go through that in detail as there are only two items and two speakers for the first item and one speaker for the second item. So the procedure will be, we'll hear from speakers in relation to each item, then we'll go into closed session and to deliberate, and we'll come back to announce our decisions, which will be live streamed. Could I ask everyone to place their mobile phones on silent? And we'll start with the first item, which is 6.1 DA 23/0555, two-lot subdivision at 10 Old Hume Highway, Berrimah. I have two registered speakers, the applicant, Mr. Scott Lee, the applicant's planning consultant, and the owner, Mr. Jeff Hanratty. So, would you like to come forward? Yes. So please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick apology on behalf of Mr. Hanratty. He runs his own small business and was not able to come this afternoon, so it's just me, if I may. And I've just making myself available if there are any particular questions. There are only a couple of things I'd say. Firstly, obviously we're in favour of the Council's recommendation for approval. The only other comment is that in a couple of locations there are paragraphs in the report, there is reference to non-compliance of the lot size for the residential portion. We don't believe that's correct because we don't think the minimum lot size applies because of the overriding provisions of the other clause that we are using to subdivide in this fashion. So that's just a technical point, but we don't believe it's a non-compliant DA, it's fully compliant. So if the panel has any questions, sorry, I might want to say up one other thing. It's been in front of the panel before. Subsequent to that meeting, we did have the opportunity to meet with Council's director and manager, and we had a productive discussion around what we might do next. And one of the suggestions there was to provide some additional information about what a future dwelling house may in fact look like and where it would be placed. So we had one of the local architects do that work and submit it with the application. And I believe that now there is I suppose a fuller package of information and more surety perhaps around the capacity of that residential parcel to accommodate something that would be suitable. So that was a productive outcome of the last process. So any questions? Happy to try and answer them.
Yes, I have some questions. So the first question was, had you considered vehicular access from the rear rather than from the Old Hume Highway frontage, which is quite, it's sort of verging on dangerous there? Had you considered
the owner had considered that, but didn't want, I suppose, unnecessarily to burden that rural parcel with another, what would I suppose be a right of carriageway across the rural portion, which would come off the rear road. So it was considered initially, but the applicant's preference was not to do that, and similarly to the other residential portions along the Old Hume Highway, simply just have an individual crossing.
Okay, and the next question was, in the report at page 18, there's reference to a couple of the DCP provisions. The first one is A 8.1.3 building envelopes, and there's a reference there to the possibility of having an 88B restriction on the title to limit the future development to the indicative building envelope. Do you have any comments in relation to whether that if we were to approve the application and to apply that provision. Would you have any comments on that?
No, I don't think the owner and certainly not myself are hostile to the building envelopes when they serve a particular purpose, and this might be a situation where it's worthwhile having that. It's in some respects, I mean, the envelope or where you put the house will be self-regulating. And we did show a building envelope or an indicative building envelope in the submission.
Yes, we have that, yeah.
Yeah, so look, if that's a necessary imposition on the title, in this case, that's acceptable if it means there's an approval. But I think at the end it probably have limited value because the house will end up, for other reasons, you know, through the assessment under the DCP and where the logical place to put the house is, it probably means it'll be in that location in any event. So it's not really going to restrict future options as far as the owner is concerned.
And the next thing was, so the next item in that, or two items down in that box on page 18, A 8.1.5 landscape embellishment, it says a condition of council subdivision approval will be that landscape embellishment of allotments and public roads shall occur, thereby enhancing native vegetation in the locality. The report doesn't recommend any such condition, but I just want to ask you a few questions about that. So on the site, there are some mature trees in the front setback. Do you know what species they are?
No, I'm afraid I don't. As far as we're aware, there's nothing particularly significant, either environmentally or ecologically or culturally. There's quite a few of them in there. I think in order to construct the driveway and the dwelling, a lot of those would be removed. We don't have any problem if there's a requirement. I would have thought that, say, a replacement planting would come as part of the assessment of the dwelling when the final location and design is sorted out, because that'll dictate then exactly what trees are retained and what are removed, and then a landscaping plan submitted with the housing plan would seem to me to be probably the best way to get the outcome. We never really considered those existing trees to be very significant. I don't think the council does either, but I would support, you know, a replanting plan or condition that requires that. But I think it comes with that dwelling, not at the subdivision stage.
So the indicative plan we've got, which is the Kathy Barnsley plan version B, where the garage was moved to the rear. It's got some indicative planting along the northern boundary in between it and that heritage item next door. Do you know what it says it's not to scale, do you know how wide that planting strip would be?
But I think it's a metre and a half is my understanding, because I think that would be the indicative side boundary setback that might be required for the dwelling.
Yeah. And you think that would be a desirable thing to have some sort of screening between?
Oh, I think so, yeah. Okay. I think so, yeah.
They were my... That was the questions that we had in relation to that one. So we can move on to 6.2. So there's a couple of issues. The item's going to have to be deferred because there's an issue about concurrence is required from DPE Water as well as Water New South Wales, and that hasn't been obtained. So...
May I? Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Did you want to address this first before I...
Sorry.
I thought maybe I'd tell you what my things were, okay, and then you could have a go. That might be easier. Okay. So yeah, so it's going to have to be deferred to get that concurrence, and then we had some other issues that we wanted to be addressed in the report when it comes forward, and it seemed to me that potentially we could just deal with that electronically. So there is there is a bit of a concern we have about permissibility, and it may be that we'll be seeking independent legal advice about that, but we thought there needed to be a slightly more fulsome description of the development, because there seemed to be a little bit of a lack of clarity about the development. And I was just wondering if you could, when I'm finished with all my issues, if you could maybe address that. So, for example, when I read the report, I didn't really understand that retail use was going to be occurring on the site, which goes to the issue of whether it's if it's a liquid fuel depot, it's prohibited, but a liquid fuel depot, it's not a liquid fuel depot if there's retail sale on the site, and I hadn't actually appreciated that. There was also some discussion about whether a plan of management should be provided to deal with things like, security of the site, treatment of hazardous, just the hazard management of the site, staff training, etc., and that there'd be an ongoing condition with that plan of management required. And do you know, has the plan of subdivision that was approved under DA 200094, has that been registered?
Yeah, I believe it has. I mean, there's a lot of other development in that precinct occurring. My understanding is, yes, it's been registered, and all the conditions of consent that applied to that subdivision have been complied with. So,
right.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, my last issue, which was my own personal issue, was that there was a provision in the DCP about perimeter landscaping that hadn't been complied with, and I just wanted to know, is there any reason why that can't be complied with?
Well, I suppose the short answer is no. The longer answer might be more complicated. I think, yes, I mean, I think any landowner up there in that employment zone is not wanting to, give away too much of their usable area for perimeter planting. Now, the landscaping, obviously, along the street frontage, that's fair and reasonable. No one's going to argue with that. When it comes to the side boundary and certainly the rear boundary, I think most property owners think, well, what's this? What's this for? What are we doing? And some of that perimeter planning then goes against what they can do, which is in some of the industrial areas, build boundary to boundary. So I'm not sure that the requirement in the DCP is really that sensible or fair on some landowners. So certainly nothing. No problem.
Most of the other people haven't.
Well, I haven't done it. It's not a feature of the location. Yeah, I think it might be a bit harsh to impose it.
So that was the end of my questions. I just thought I'd ask if the others have any questions, and then you could respond.
Yeah, I've just got a pretty simple one, Scott. I just looked at the way the office, the building is arranged, the disabled car space. I think between it and the edge of the building, the office, it's only 1 metre. So for anyone to come in, it's really tight. And I think that could be addressed by maybe moving that car space to the other side. So you got the access way, the disabled access, and then you could put the car space. So then it opens up that area. I think, is there any issue?
No, I think if that sounds like a good suggestion. So no, I don't think there's any problem with that.
I think that was really all that I had. No, that's it from me. I thought I had something else, but no, that was it.
Mine was more just a comment on our discussion earlier, was when we were talking about whether the subdivision had been registered. We then also talked about whether, because this development is over 2 lots, whether there's a potential issue if we require a consolidation of the lots.
Yeah, that is quite often a requirement or a condition in those circumstances. So the landowner or the proponent's not going to be worried about doing that. Makes perfect sense. You don't want that situation.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have any?
That might be an even better suggestion. So we're happy to take that on. I mean, everybody wants the best result at the end for that for that car space to be most effective and useful. So we don't raise an issue with that at all. In the broader context then of what, Chair, what you've just said, if a deferral is available, that's, great, because it will allow us the opportunity to address the issues. It's far better than the alternative. I imagine then the notes or the minutes from the meeting will be clear enough for us to be able to address the issues particularly. And this is, as you're aware, it's been around for some time, back and forth. So the applicant, I think, or the proponent will be quite happy to be given the chance to address those issues. We'll get onto that. I'm not sure to what extent, I'll have to talk to him about what extent the retail is an issue for him. My impression all along has been it's more wholesale rather than retail. That's the way it appears that the business currently operates from the site that they've already got at Campbelltown. But obviously if it's a potential permissibility problem, we need to have an answer.
About permissibility, so the zoning table says that heavy industrial storage establishments are prohibited, and then the definition of heavy industrial storage establishment, I'll find it. Heavy industrial storage establishment includes a liquid fuel depot. So I had a concern about whether it was a liquid fuel depot, but liquid fuel depot is defined as premises used for the bulk storage of petrol, oil, petroleum or other inflammable liquid for wholesale distribution and at which no retail trade is conducted. So the fact that there will be retail trade to tradies would take it out of that definition as I understand it.
Yes, if it's that definition.
Yes, so that's what. I had actually meant to ask if you could explain a bit more what your understanding.
My understanding is that it's
how
not a hazardous industry. It's not chemical storage. I mean, it's gas storage, non-hazardous. That are used day to day in all sorts of domestic and business situations. It's not an offensive or hazardous industry. So we had originally lodged the DA as not as designated development on a certain belief, but then the council said no, we think it's needs to be done as designated development. So that's when the EIS was done on top of the original statement. But I've never understood the proposal to be an offensive or hazardous industry, and certainly not the definition that you've just quoted from.
No, it was the liquid fuel depot.
I don't think it's a liquid fuel depot.
You don't think it's a liquid
no.
fuel? No,
but if that's the concern or one of the concerns, and we have a chance to respond to that,
yes.
Well then that's great.
That's why I'm raising it now. Yeah. That it was put to me that it wasn't a liquid fuel depot because there would be retail trade being conducted, i.e. tradies would come there and buy canisters of... Is that what you understand?
No, I don't think it's a liquid fuel depot because it's not a liquid fuel depot. I mean, the issue of wholesale trade, retail trade is a different question, okay, and we need to obviously provide some clarification around that as well, because we don't want to be sort of answer half the question and then still have the same problem. So we need to identify that for you.
It might be one where you might want to get your own legal advice as well, I think.
Well, by the sounds of it, that's where we will put some of our effort.
Yeah, when I read the report, I had a concern about permissibility based on that. So, yeah.
Thank you, because that's really clear. And when I go back and talk to my client, I can make it very clear what our first challenge is. Let's clear the air on exactly what this is and what it isn't.
Yes.
And then I think from
that's
there...
what I mean. We can't really
should be okay.
Answer the permissibility question until we really know what the proposal is, because it wasn't entirely clear. I mean, you call it chemical storage, but on one view it actually is liquid fuel.
Okay,
Ah.
I've got,
All right.
I got them.
Okay, thank
Yep,
you.
thank you.
Scott, just one more question. Would you have an objection? I'm presuming you've got two driveways, one's an in, one's an out. So is there a problem if we, potentially if a condition went one driveway's an in and one out for safety more than anything? Yeah.
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
think that's probably the way, it's not, perhaps it's not made clear enough that that's the way it would work.
That's the-
But that's
yeah,
certainly,
that was
again,
the
my
intention.
understanding is that's why it's there, so
Yeah,
you can have
that's-
some circular movement
That's what I
through.
thought, but I just didn't.
No, I
know
think
how
that's
clear,
great.
but yeah,
That makes
okay.
sense.
So, no more questions? No, I don't think. Okay, so thank you for coming.
Thanks very much for the
along.
opportunity. Thank you.
There are no more items, so I'm closing the public meeting at 2:17 PM. And as I say, we'll come back and announce our decisions in due course. Thank you.